You'll need to be a little more careful when you revert a file back to the older 97 to 2003 format than you were when you converted it up to the newer format. You'll want to revert it back only if you need to share and work with the file with others who do not have Office 2007 or 2010. Now, if that only happens to be maybe 1 or 2 people out of 10, then don't go to the lowest common denominator. Instead, remember that those people can download the compatibility pack free from Microsoft that will allow them to work with and use these newer features too. If you can't guarantee, though, that the people you'll be sharing this with will be able to do that, then when you're working with those people, like the general public for example, my recommendation is for you to work in the new format so you have all the functionality and then save it back when you're done, only for the distribution copy. There's a text file with a link to the compatibility pack download from the Microsoft site in the Chapter 2 project files folder for your reference. That way you can be sure to share that with others who may not be up to speed quite yet. I'm back at my training document, and I know that this is a document that was just converted up from the old format, so right now it doesn't have anything that wouldn't be compatible. Since we want to take a look at some of the compatibility issues, I think I'm probably going to have to fix that. Otherwise this might be a very short or very boring lesson, and we don't want that. In order to do that, I'm going to insert some quick content. I'm going to go ahead and scroll down on the page. And this is actually about a training company. And there's a paragraph that starts off talking about offering a 3-pronged approach to training. So I'm just going to very quickly insert a paragraph, and I'm going to add some smart art. Hopefully this is something that's familiar to you. I'll go to the Insert tab. I'll click Smart Art. Smart art, of course, is something that was introduced in 2007, and it's one of my favorite things to kind of visualize some of the concepts that people talk about. And I'm going to look for a category here, maybe a relationship. And maybe what I'll do is choose this funnel. Go ahead and select it. I'll click OK. And then I'm just going to very quickly go ahead and create the shapes for this funnel. The 3 types of training we're talking about include CBT. I'll use my down arrow, something called ILT or instructor-led training. And the last one is virtual. Very simple, but it'll work for what we need to do. Now I'm just going to go ahead and click off of that so that we can get out of it and see it on the document itself. Something like that. Now we have something that's a new feature only available in the latest versions of Office, and now we can go ahead and check the compatibility if we want to move it back to the prior version, or the 97 to 2003 format. You certainly could go ahead and just change the format, save it back to the old version, but I recommend that you don't do it that way unless you like surprises. The first thing you should do, in my opinion, is to actually take a look at the compatibility checker that will see and tell you exactly what may be affected if you change it back. Generally, no content is ever lost completely in this process, but the functionality with things like Smart Art is removed, and the object is instead rendered as something like a simple image file. We just saw how I was able to enter the names of the little balls that were going into the funnel. Well, when I change it back, I won't have that functionality. I will still have a picture of the funnel. This means that people viewing the file probably aren't going to notice anything different, but they will not be able to edit things like Smart Art, which is just something you need to be aware of. In order to test the compatibility, we're going to use the compatibility checker, which is available from the backstage. So let's move up to the upper left, click on our File tab, and take a look at our Info panel. And if we look at the grouping called Prepare for Sharing, this is actually what we're getting ready to do. We want to share this document. Could be with coworkers, could be with other students or professors, could be the general public, but we're still sharing the document. And this gives us some really good information. It's telling us that before we share the file, we have some specifics. We know that this document still contains properties like the author's name and related dates that we might want to take out. We also might want to take a look at footers and content that people with disabilities may be unable to read. All of this may be a concern regardless of who we are and what kind of work we do, but especially if we work with the public. Well, we're not going to address those quite yet. That's kind of a different topic, but we do want to come over to the left and click the button that says Check for Issues. This is where we can actually inspect the document for some of those things like hidden properties. We can check for accessibility to make sure that people with disabilities will be able to read or hear or view or do whatever it is they need to do with our document. And what we're talking about right now, actually checking the compatibility. check for features that are not supported by earlier versions. Let's go ahead and give that one a click. And that's going to bring up a little dialog box. What's new here is that we have the ability via a drop-down to select the versions to show. Now we're currently looking at 2010, and we're talking specifically about the fact that the old binary files, 97 to 2003, have a lot of things that aren't going to be compatible. But we also know that there is a version kind of between the two, which was 2007, and some of the features in 2010 were not available in 2007. So we can turn on or off checking for either or both of these. I'm going to go ahead and leave it on for both right now. And we can simply see that there is only one identified issue. SmartArt graphics will be converted into a single object that can't be edited in previous versions of Word. I think that's pretty clear. It's not a lot of technobabble. It tells us exactly what the issue might be. It also tells us that we have one occurrence. We know it's on page 1, and there's also a link to help if we need some further information. Once we know what to be concerned with, then we can make smart choices about whether the change will be acceptable. If we do want to change it back to the old version, or if maybe we should keep the new format and maybe not have some people be able to use it, but we're not willing to take the changes that would be required to convert it back, or if we would change the content so that it's not an issue. In other words, if I could put in some kind of a graphic or a bulleted list or maybe simple drawing tools that isn't SmartArt, but where the compatibility would not be an issue. All three of those are options. The compatibility checker actually will not make any changes for us. It's just informational. So it's telling us what's wrong. We need to then make the choices. I did also want to point out that there's a check mark at the bottom that will allow us to say we want to check compatibility anytime we save the document. I think that's a good idea so we don't forget, especially if you work back and forth between the versions. For now, with that information, I'm just going to say OK. And now the question is, what are we going to do about it? Well, let's say that we do want to go ahead and convert this back to the older format. There's absolutely nothing new as far as that's concerned. This is a skill everybody should have. We simply go back to our file and our backstage view, and we do a save as. Now, I know that a lot of you have saved files before, and that's okay, but I want to caution you about something. Starting with Office 2007, people got a little casual or lax. And what they would do is simply come in here, give it a name, and say, okay, go ahead and save it. But I want to draw your attention to something. Under Save As Type, it says Word Document. And that should not be alarming, or probably wouldn't be alarming to most of you. But I need to make you aware of kind of the verbiage or the syntax that they use with these newer versions of Office. Anytime you see just a name, like Word Document, Excel Spreadsheet, PowerPoint Presentation, that's actually referring to the new format. When it's referring to the older format, it will always have the 97 to 2003 specifically designated. So a lot of people get confused and say, well, I saved it as a Word document and for some reason somebody can't see it now, or I've lost functionality. That's because the generic is the new version and the 97 to 2003 is always the old version. So I want to make sure that I choose the one that says 97 2003. I'm going to go ahead and give this a different name so that we can keep our original file. I'm going to call this Training Proposal 2. And then I'm simply going to click Save. Now you might smile because you say, wait a second, I thought we already went through the compatibility checker. We did, but remember we also checked this little check mark at the bottom that says, I want you to check it anytime I save. So it's just coming up again, and we can say, yes, we're aware of it. Go ahead and continue. There we go. Now we're back to the old version. How do we know? Well, we could go through all the different steps that we did before, but the easiest way is to simply look at the top of our title bar and notice that our good old friend compatibility mode is back. As far as what version you want to do most of your work in, well, I can't tell you that because it really depends on other people, not necessarily just you. And of course, that's going to be different for everybody. As far as compatibility with other programs, well, you're going to see similar types of things. For example, you'll see some different SmartArt functionality in different programs, but we'll also see some issues with chart functionality when we use them in things like PowerPoint and Excel and even Word itself. In general, though, my recommendation is working in 2010 and then saving back to 97 2003 if necessary. If you have to update a file and you've done that, you'll make your changes in 2010 and then revert it back again by using Save As. I know that starts to sound like it's very cumbersome, but it's really not. It only takes a few seconds and a few clicks. But what it does is it ensures that you'll be able to use all of these fabulous 2010 features that we're discovering without having to leave them out just because somebody else may not have the access to using them themselves. But remember that if they have the compatibility pack, or when you convert it back, at least it's going to be viewed the same way. So take advantage of the tools you have, and then know who your audience is or who you're distributing to so you can make choices about how you actually save the file in the end.